keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? Jake Ham back with another video. Today, we're going to be looking at Saturday's NFL divisional games that went down. We have two going on, the Chiefs and the Texans, and the Detroit Lions and the Washington Commanders. But before we get into it on the breakdown, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up with other NFL content, such as free agency, NFL draft, NFL playoffs, stuff like that. It's going to be coming up. I'm going to be posting about it on this channel. So please make sure to subscribe to be able to keep up with that. So moving into this game, first off, starting out on Saturday at 4:30, we had the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Houston Texans. As you can see here, the Chiefs ended up winning 23-14. Looking at this, both quarterbacks didn't really do like a whole lot. Patrick Mahomes kind of struggled looking at this. He had 177 and a touchdown. And then Stroud actually had 245, but they would drive it down the field and they wouldn't really be able to get into the end zone. They struggled a lot in the red zone. Bobby Slowick wasn't too creative. The Texans really had a really good run game. Whenever I was watching the game, I think that they should have just stayed on the ground more, instead of getting pass happy. Joe Mixon had 88 yards and a touchdown. He really did his thing. CJ Stroud had a lot of chance for 42 yards on the ground. The moral of this game, though, was really defensive battle between both teams, and the special teams was the biggest factor here. Because if you're looking at this, Steve Spagnuolo with the Kansas City Chiefs, they were able to put a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud, which caused him to scramble for these 42 yards with the times that he was able to get away. But if you look right here, CJ Stroud was sacked 8 times for 58 yards. They were able to run the ball very well up on the offense line in the front seven, but they were not able to really protect him too much. He had a lot of struggle. He was getting hit a lot, getting out of field goal range. In that red zone, that was kind of pushing them to be able to only score 14 points. They ended up only scoring one touchdown, so they had a lot of field goals. And it kind of kept it a very low scoring game. I think the Texans also did a great job on their defensive side of the ball, though, against the Chiefs. They were able to get 3 sacks against Patrick Mahomes, kind of containing him. What didn't really allow him to scramble too much, as he only had 14 yards. But the biggest playmaker in this Kansas City Chief team, as we've seen the last couple of years, in the playoffs that rise, was Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce had a great game. He had a phenomenal game, even though he hasn't really done much this year. He was able to kind of put it together in this game, going for 7 receptions, 117 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then the last big factor for this game that ended up happening really was the special teams. We've seen it right off the bat. Kansas City Chiefs had that huge return that really set them up, even though they were held to a field goal. You can look at the yards here, 131 to 67 yards. The Houston Texans on the first play of the game had one of their players pushing their special teams coach. If I was him, I would have got in him a lot more, and he wouldn't have played a single more down for the rest of the season. He would have been cut right after that game. But that was a big point. And then just the kicking. Look at this. Butker obviously comes out. He does what he needs to. 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 extra points. The biggest issue here for the Kansas City or the Houston Texans ended up happening, is these 2 missed field goals and the extra point. Fairbear usually does a pretty good job. He's been a pretty good kicker this year, but for whatever reason, that very first kick they missed was super wide right. Wasn't even close. And yeah, just I think really the Kansas City Chiefs were getting a really good jump and kind of forcing the pressure to kind of go on to Fairbear. And he was kind of feeling it a little bit coming off the edge. So I think it kind of rushed him a little bit. And then the Chiefs ended up blocking one of the field goals at the very end. So he ended up going 2 for 4 and he missed a 50-yarder. I don't know if it was the wind or what, but he also ended up missing the extra point as well. And if you look at it, that's 7 points right there. And if you add that to the Texans, if they're able to execute on special teams, it's 21-23. You're probably getting the ball back at the end. You're either hoping for a stop and you have a chance to go win it with another field goal, or you can go down there and get a quick bomb and maybe score really fast. And that's really the difference in the game. Made it a 2 possession game instead of 1 possession game. So then your whole mindset and strategy changes at this point. And it was the moral of this game is just defense and special teams. That's what really got the Chiefs this win because Patrick Mahomes didn't go crazy like he does. Their run game didn't go too crazy. I think the Texans offense actually did better than the Kansas City Chiefs offense against the Texans defense. And it's really just that special teams came up in a huge part. So this kind of leads to the Chiefs getting that matchup next week. I don't know how they're going to do if their offense doesn't really show up. They're either going to be playing the Ravens or the Bills, and if their offense doesn't show up, they're going to get beat and not be able to go to the Super Bowl. But it is the Chiefs. They're going to get the calls, they're going to get the breaks, and they're going to get all the luckiness go their way. So moving on to this game, the Washington Commanders against the Detroit Lions. In this game, me personally, I picked obviously the Detroit Lions. This is probably the upset of the season with the Commanders ended up upsetting the Lions, especially in my shocking way. It was such a high scoring game, especially after what the Lions did to the Vikings 2 weeks ago, even though the Vikings were kind of exposed as frauds. This is very shocking what they were able to do against that defense and that the Lions weren't really able to control the clock like they normally do with their run game, and their offense being able to kind of control the game in the field. The Commanders were more of the big play type team, and don't sleep on them. They're a very good team, especially with Jaden Daniels back there being able to make plays. I mean, obviously they're a good team. They're going to the NFC Championship either against the Eagles or the Rams based on what's going to happen. But in this game, it was pretty much why the Lions lost was everybody's fear was that Jared Goff was going to cost them a game by turning the ball over. Now, the Lions, when they play games, they obviously run the ball. Everybody knows that. If Jared Goff does not turn it over and plays a good, clean game like he has most of the regular season, the Lions are not going to lose. But in the back of the mind, everybody knew if Jared Goff comes out and has a game like he did tonight, where he comes out and he throws 3 interceptions and that's going to cost the Lions and they're going to lose no matter what team that they're playing. The Lions are made that way. If Jared Goff turns the ball over, especially with any quarterback, it's been seen all playoffs with Justin Herbert. It's been seen all playoffs with Jordan Love. If you throw 3 interceptions, you're going to lose the football game. All right. And this is exactly what happens here. He has his yards like he does, 313, only 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions. The 3 interceptions is what cost them, especially too with that trick play towards the end that pretty much sealed it with Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams threw a pick. It wasn't very smart for him. In my opinion, I would have did that with Amon Ra because Jamison Williams looks up, sees that the dude's not open, and he says, F it anyways. I'm going to throw it down there, and it leads to the pick that kills the Lions drive. So I really think they should have did it with Amon Ra, maybe had Jamison Williams run the route, or maybe a Tim Patrick run the route, more of a either speedy or a big body guy with Amon Ra throwing it. But that's really just Jamison Williams isn't used to that, and he needed to be told several times. I'm sure he was. If it's not there, just take off because you're the fast guy. But he ended up forcing it anyways. And the big kudos here goes to Jane Daniels throwing for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also with Cliff Kingsbury being able to get the run game going. The reason I had the Lions so confidently is because the Commanders were the 30th ranked run defense in NFL. And the Lions, we all know, are going to come down, run it down your throat, pound it down your throat, and they're just going to keep running with Gibbs and Montgomery. But if you look at this, last week, the Commanders only had 40 yards rushing against the Buccaneers, and 30 of it was with Jaden Daniels. The Lions get 200, as everybody knows that what they're going to get. The Commanders had 182 rushing yards. That's big for them because they're not usually a running team. They're usually more of a Jaden Daniels make a play, and then if they're going to get running yards, it's going to be Jaden Daniels getting out in space. But they were able to get Brian Robinson going with 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Jaden Daniels going to add to it with his carries that he's going to get with the 50 yards. And then they were even able to get Eckler out in space with 47 yards and his long being a 35-yarder. So with them being able to run the ball and kind of being able to keep up with Detroit's run game, that's really what opened it up for Jaden Daniels. Because if you have to respect the Commanders' running game, Jaden Daniels is going to pick you apart. And we've seen it towards the end when Aaron Glenn several times was kind of getting worried about the game, and he started to bring a lot of pressure. And this is another thing for Jaden Daniels is because he stayed calm during that pressure with the free rusher coming straight into his face. and he stays calm. He's like, I know where I gotta go. If this dude's coming, he's gonna put it right in the spot where that blitzer came from. That was on that 4th and 2 that pretty much sealed it, where they ended up scoring and taking a 2-score lead. He put it right in the pocket, converted on the 4th and 2, and then they're inside the 5-yard line and they're ready to go score. So that was the big part of it. Just Jared Goff's turnovers and the Commanders really being able to keep up with Detroit's run game. They were able to, the Lions got 200 yards on the ground, but the Commanders were able to pretty much equal that out with 182. And the Detroit Lions didn't get a single sack on Jaden Daniels. He's able to move his feet and extend plays and pretty much just make it happen where he can get out and not get that sack. That's a huge part of it, with the especially with the no turnovers as well. If you throw 3 picks in a game, you're gonna lose, and that was just pretty much what happened. So the Commanders end up upsetting Detroit, and the biggest upset that I'm trying to remember, this is probably very similar in my mind to that Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl run against the Rams, where the Bengals were like, okay, they're good and they have good players that they've drafted, but they're not necessarily ready to win, and maybe in a year or two. But then they end up upsetting people, and then they make that run to the Super Bowl. The Commanders kind of the same way. They have Jaden Daniels, they have some young pieces, but it's like, I don't know if they're necessarily ready right now, but apparently they are with this upset, and they've already beaten the Eagles once this year, even though Jalen Hurts got hurt. So if they get the Eagles, they've beaten them this year. And I can't remember off the top of my head if they've played Rams or not, but if they get the Rams are hot. And a Rams versus Commanders NFC Championship, I think, would be a very fun game, especially with how that Rams defense is playing against Jaden Daniels. So that would be a very fun, entertaining game. But especially the pick six here, you got 4 interceptions that you're throwing. You're just not going to win football games that way. But make sure to keep out for my video tomorrow on Monday for the recap and the Sunday games today. Today on Sunday, we have the Eagles versus the Rams, and we have the big one that's probably the biggest NFL game of the season, the Bills versus Ravens, to see who's going to go play the Chiefs. So make sure to subscribe to be able to keep up with that. Make sure to like the video, comment anything that you have, disagree, agree on any of my takes. We can have a conversation down below. And please make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, feel like John Morant. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Morant. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple.